Hello and welcome to the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast with me, Clive Barber, and my good mate, Noel Tom. For the days when you can't ride your bike, there's always the Trail and Adventure Motorbike Podcast.
Where's Noel?
I thought he was fitting new tyres to his bike.
He has been.
He was doing that yesterday.
He's probably still got the irons out.
Me and Noel have a little known secret that we never fit our own tyres. We always go to a man in Kendal what does them for us. So I doubt very much he's actually fitted those tyres himself.
Right. And Moose is infinitely harder than...
Well, he wouldn't buy Mooses because they're expensive. We got a question from James, which we'll come to at some point. I would like to hear what you guys think about the essential maintenance skills that you need to acquire before you go out on the trail. So I'm just going to message... you can't even ring Noel up because he never answers his phone.
Is there some kind of incantation you have to say, or...
To summon him.
Yeah, you've got to rub together two chainsaws with a flat cap or something.
I could try Noel's mobile, but he's never actually got it switched on. It's so annoying. Most normal people you can just ring up, can't you? Let's try it just for a laugh.
No messaging service. The person you are calling is unable to take your call.
Fuck's sake.
Message after the tone.
Podcast gold. It's 12 minutes past. Let's start with that, Noel. Because you'll only just come up with some weird shit anyway that nobody else really thinks is sensible or viable.
Yeah, but that's the gold, isn't it?
No, he's just insane. There's a few things in here left to talk about. What tools and other things do you take with you? Riding on your own, is it safe to do it? Riding technology, sat-navs and all that kind of stuff. And then something about the code of conduct. Then we've also got from James what essential maintenance things do you need to talk about? So let's start off with riding on your own, which I guess a lot of new riders tend to do anyway because you haven't made any pals yet, and I've certainly been out on my own. I guess the real dangers are is if you actually have an accident and you're left in the middle of nowhere, up a trail, on your own. You may not have mobile phone reception, so you could be in some fairly serious trouble. So what are your opinions on riding on your own, and what can you do to make it safer? Will, you've got no friends. What do you do?
Well, I just wait 6 months and then ride with you for a week. Yeah, when I started out, I was a big bike, so I was really loath to go trail riding on my own with that because, even if you do fall off, the thing might fall on top of you, which it was wont to do. And then you really are stuck. So I just didn't do it. I got on Facebook and found people, even if it wasn't through my local TRF group, because not all of them were riding big bikes. I could find a subset of people that were riding big bikes that would travel further because they're on big bikes to go trail riding. So I just never have, actually. And maybe a couple of times, but when I have done that, I've gone at a much slower pace, been a bit more gentle about things, and just taking it easy. I've also got one of those Garmins that can you press an emergency button and helicopters fly in and rescue.
Isn't that really scarily expensive, though, if you actually do press that button? That you get like bills for tens of thousands of pounds?
No. Common misconception thing. If you buy into the subscription service, you get insurance for this, but that's only if you're abroad. Here, emergency services are all free.
Yeah, so if you're in the UK, there's no big fat bill.
Used to be the EU as well, but I don't, hashtag fucking Brexit, etc. But yeah, certainly if you buy into their service, which is something like 15 quid a month, then you get insurance for that.
Cool.
So basically, push the button, don't worry about it.
A small aside, Will's just messaged me. He's not so sure about that subscription thing. So if you do go with the Garmin InReach, make sure you have got everything covered before you do press that button. And you've got all the subscriptions and insurances in place that you need. Back to the pod. I guess the other thing I've thought about is, and probably did at the time, was not to ride anywhere that is massively remote. So certainly in Cumbria, maybe give the old coach road a miss because, you rarely see somebody else on it and it's way north lakes. Whereas, some of the other lanes, you quite often see usually walkers.
I suppose coach road, if you could communicate, is pretty accessible, isn't it? You could drive an ambulance up there.
You could from one end, probably not from the other, because there's one quite rocky ascent or descent depending on which way you're coming.
To that point, you wouldn't ride up the most gnarly of trails on your own. That would be a silly thing to do because you're already in peril because it's hard. no one can get to you.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's my point. Miss out those bits that are really tricky or very remote. Obviously, it's best if you don't ride on your own, and it's a lot more fun if you do ride with people. I guess the other things are make sure you tell somebody where you're going, give them a rough route of where you're going. Make sure your phone is fully charged and you have one of those mobile chargers with you. It's quite a good thing. And keep it somewhere on your person. Don't put it on the bike. Put it in a pocket where if you do part company and you've broken your leg, you can actually just put your hand in your pocket and grab your phone.
Some of this bleeds into the technology bit you'll get onto later, but the Garmin thing I've got is a sat nav. It's got the emergency button on it, but you can use your phone. So the thing is tied to the bike, right? But if you come off, you still want to be able to communicate. So you can use your phone to make GPS calls.
And you say it's not crazy expensive. It's £50 a year.
Yeah, there's a joining fee of something like 20 quid or something, and then it's £15 a month.
Right.
So you pay, but it's a rolling contract. So if you're going away for a month, you put the 15 quid in, and that's it. Then you can't, and then you just don't renew it for the next month.
Oh, so you basically renew it when you know you're going away. So I could go out for a ride on Sunday and go, right, I'll pay me 15 quid just in case.
Yeah, and you could go out for another 2 Sundays at least.
Yeah, excellent. What about things like, I mean, you always take water out with you anyway because you don't want to get dehydrated, but maybe some food. What about an emergency shelter? I've never, ever done that, but I suppose it's something you could do. Food and water and an emergency shelter. Does anybody take an emergency shelter trail riding? Seems very unlikely.
I think I've got a first aid kit with one of those foil blankets in it. That's probably about as close as I get. But I mean, I've never ridden on my own because when I joined to go trail riding, the whole idea was to do things with people. And there was always with, Facebook and WhatsApp, there's always ways of communicating with people. Even if you couldn't go with an awful lot of people on a weekend, there's normally 1 or 2 people who go out and there's always a message on Facebook to say, a group of people are going out. So I've never ridden on my own. And actually the first time I went out, someone did have an accident, which kind of took them out to an extent. They certainly couldn't ride their bike any further. And the fact that we were all there to pull their bike out of a wire fence and whatever was really handy. I mean, it's not just about, if you have a whoopsie and hurt yourself, it's about if your bike goes flying off somewhere or you need to kind of get it out, you don't really want to abandon it on the trail. I mean, you will if you have to, but yeah, I would never ride on my own, though I've seen loads of people do it. But the trails around our way, especially on the weekend, are quite well known and are quite well travelled. So there's normally quite a lot of people and you can tend to hear them a fair way off. So I've never really had any concerns about that, but I always carry like a first aid kit just in case.
The good thing about bikers is they'll always stop and help no matter what, whether it's a breakdown or no matter what it is. Somebody does see you, they will stop and help.
I came across this. We were out trail riding once, and I came across a cyclist who had slipped on the ice and fallen. And there were car drivers just driving around. He was lying in the road. Car drivers were just getting around him. So we stopped and helped him out. But yeah, he was in a bit of a mess. I wish I'd had a shelter then because I gave him all my kit and it was bloody freezing. But yeah, it turned out he'd severe concussion and he'd broken his pelvis and all the rest of it.
Wow.
All stuff after doing first aid course now I would know much more about because his head was bleeding. I thought, oh great, his head's bleeding. That's the thing. But actually, broken pelvis, way worse.
So there you go. Maybe there's another top tip, which is if there's a local first aid course you can go on. I know they do them locally for motorcyclists. I've done a couple of biker down courses, which are really, really great. Normally run by police officers or paramedics or firefighters and stuff like that. But I think that's really, really helpful just for some almost like trail triage. You're never going to do them the prettiest bandage in the world, but you're probably going to stop someone bleeding out on if they really do have a clanger. So definitely recommend something like that. I think it's handy for anyone, whether you're trail riding or road riding or in general, really.
Yeah, for sure. And shout out to TRF. If you're a member, generally they will run free courses. Local groups organise these things. And if they don't, you can just prod your chairman local to say, hey, get the fire service or whoever it is to come and organise that.
I guess what we're saying with riding on your own, yeah, you can do it, but just take a few sensible precautions. Ride carefully. Make sure people know where you are. And there's a few. We'll come on to technology. It's down to the level of risk you're prepared to take, isn't it? Really. 99 times out of 100, you're going to be absolutely fine. But I guess there will be some freak circumstances where stuff could get messy.
I guess some people would want to, right? Like some people would maybe want to ride on their own, and they're aware of the risks that they might have around that. But I guess that. For me, there's so many people who trail ride with such different levels of experience, different bikes. I mean, I think we've got pretty different bikes that we all ride, but the tools are out there to communicate with people who are at a similar level to you, on similar machinery to you. And there's going to be a way that you can kind of like share that experience with someone. And like we were just talking about changing tires, or if you get a puncture or something, it tends to be that these things aren't very funny if you're on your own and you're in the middle of nowhere. It's pretty depressing. But if you're with someone, it tends to make the whole thing a little bit lighter. Like you can share the work to an extent, and you can kind of have a bit of banter with someone, and you can get a bit of help. But in the case that you're on your own, it probably isn't so much fun. So I guess some people might want to ride on their own, but it's never appealed to me.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, a lot more fun when you're with a bunch of other people. Okay, so I guess one of the other things that can happen on the trail is a breakdown. And if you've seen Greg's recent film, it happened to me quite a lot. And at least 2 other things happened that Greg didn't even include in the film, which we may or may not go into now. So I actually got away with quite a bit from that film. What other things do you take with you? You obviously have a toolkit, which has got a spanner and a screwdriver or a Torx wrench or whatever. You've got something that fits every nut and bolt on your bike, right? And you've been through that, and you've checked your toolkit, and you've taken things out that you don't need, and you've put things in that you do need, right? Guys, you've done that, haven't you?
I have done that, yeah, many times.
Yeah, I haven't actually. I'm just hoping that it'll be all right. I've got a fairly good coverage in there.
I just took the toolkit that came with the bike. I've checked that to make sure all the bits are in there, and kind of rely on the fact that the people who built the bike know the tools that is required for it, as well
actually,
as...
It depends on the gear. You're a Yamaha, right? Is it Yamaha?
No, it's a Beta now.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, so does your toolkit include something to get both wheels off? Because KTMs used to and no longer do.
That's the main thing. If you have a puncture well, you shouldn't need to if you're running mooses, but yeah, because wheel nuts are big, so you need a big spanner for those. You haven't checked, have you? I'm looking at your face. I can tell you haven't checked.
I'm pretty sure, though I'm going to check after this. But I've got like a relatively small, like lightweight toolkit I take with me as well, with some extra bits and pieces just in case. But yeah, I normally take the standard toolkit that comes with the bike. I've got my additional kind of lightweight toolkit because I only have a relatively small bag. I need to get a rack for mine. 1/2 ton of zip ties, because you can fix most things with zip ties. I think that's about it from a tool perspective.
There's 2 more things you need to go along with your zip ties, and that's gaffer tape and some metal putty. If you get a hole in your...
like JB Weld?
Yeah, if you get a hole in your crank, it's kind of really handy for... It does happen. I've used it in the past. You get an oil leakage, you can put some of that stuff over, and 9 times out of 10 it'll fix your leak temporarily.
Riding BMWs, the big pots that come out the side, so your cylinder head goes out horizontally, always smashing those. I think I fixed 4 trail side.
No.
With that stuff, yeah, and it's permanent fix as well. You can sand it back. It's amazing.
Thankfully, everybody that listened to part 1 and part 2 have now sold their stupid big BMW and bought a Beta or a KTM or a Honda CRF. Right, guys? Okay, hang on a minute. I'll try it again. Right, tampers?
I can hear an echo. I think it's a resounding scream. 500 voices all call out.
I just somebody messaged in and referred to themselves as a tamper, trail and motorbike.
That sounds so
vaguely. I'm having it. I'm using it. I'm going to make badges.
Sounds like you need to sort of get your name on a register or something. Are you a tamper? Yeah, I am. Yeah. Sorry, tamper.
You're not living next to me and my kids, then you bloody tamper. Yeah, maybe I won't use that then. So other things, spare brake, gear and clutch levers.
Yeah.
I don't carry them.
Yeah, I've always have brake and clutch. I've never actually needed to use them because I have the wraparound handguards.
Gear lever you have though, haven't you?
Well, yeah, I have got a gear lever. Did I get it back?
Yeah, I gave it to you.
I can't remember.
Greg's.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, where do you stop with these things? Because I only have a relatively lightweight backpack, and I kind of run on the assumption that hopefully nothing catastrophically will go wrong, and if it does, then kind of I'll just have to push the bike back. So I kind of tend to ride relatively leanly. I don't think that's not even a word.
You shouldn't even need to push the bike. So I've got a definitive list of things you can carry, and I tend to go a little bit over the top. So not everybody will do this, but so you've got a tool that will fit every bolt and screw on your bike. You've got levers, clutch, brake, and gear. A selection of nuts and bolts should anything rattle off. Gaffer tape. You got cable ties. You got metal putty. Spare chain link if your chain breaks. I've had that happen to me. A spare spark plug. I've always had one, never needed it. And a cable kit as well. You can buy a little multi-use cable kit, so if something goes, you can kind of replace it. And then the other thing I usually carry is a toe strap. So if you can't fix something, one of your mates can tow you out. There's a safe way of doing that. So you will attach the tow strap to the bike in front to their footrest. Just loop it through. And then what you do then with the other end of the strap is you fold it around the foot peg on your bike, the broken down bike, and you just put your foot on top of it. So if you do get into trouble, all you have to do is lift your foot off and the tow strap will come off. So you don't end up getting dragged under a bus or something like that.
Shout out to Off-Road Skills. That is a thing they teach you, the BMW course. So yeah, I've done races with tow straps. But what was it you mentioned there? You mentioned the Master Link. But you haven't got anything to break the chain. Take a chain breaker.
I also miss tyre levers. But do you know what? I don't carry tyre levers because I've got...
But that's the number one thing that's going to happen.
I've got mooses.
Yeah, but what if your moose disintegrates on the motorway?
I'll fit a 21-inch tube.
How?
I'll borrow your tyre levers.
Yeah, there you go.
But you're right, I'm bigger. That's the other thing. If you are riding with a group of people, things like metal putty, spare tubes, tyre levers, you don't all need to carry them, right? You just need to have one set of everything amongst all of you.
This is when Noel would pipe up and say, No, you absolutely do. What are you saying?
That's quite a good impression.
Thanks. I've been working on it.
Speak of the devil, let's see if he's joining or not.
I guess the other thing is not just like having the tools, it's knowing what to do with them as well. And I think that's another advantage of going out with experienced riders, like going out with TRF, because there's a good chance that someone will not only have tyre levers, but know how to actually use them, which is, makes your life a lot easier when it comes to getting your tyre fixed in decent time rather than messing around on your own.
Hey, look, we've just had a special guest joining us. He's on mute, though.
Is it Adele?
No, It's not Adele. Hello? It's Noel, guest, and you're on mute, Noel. We can't hear you or see you. Oh, he's back. Can you hear... Noel, can you say something?
Guys.
No,
what happened to the 9 o'clock start?
We changed it to 8.
We changed it to
Daylight
8.
savings.
Yeah, it's in the invitation and everything.
Oh, don't read that stuff. I just think that's the thing I need to look at when 9 o'clock comes round.
Do you not have a diary schedule kind of thing that the meeting goes into?
No.
Okay.
No.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I know. It was a silly question. Silly me. I'm the idiot here, not you.
So when did it change to 8?
Last week and the week before.
Week before. Shit.
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
Hey, I'm glad you could join us, though.
Got to badger me about this kind of thing.
I've got the opposite problem. I would never remember that there was a time. I just rely on the electronic buzzing thing to tell me when it's time to turn up stuff.
I would love an electronic buzzing thing.
There must be one. You've got a Mac, haven't you? There must be one in Mac.
Yeah, probably.
Schedule, diary tool.
I'll set aside an evening to find it and turn it on.
Yeah, it'd be well worth it. We were just talking about the stuff you need to take for fixing things on the trail, like inner tubes and tyre levers and mooses and levers and nuts and bolts and gaffer tape.
And what conclusions did you come to?
That I take everything apart from tyre levers.
Have you sort of got on to what do you do in a group ride? Do you nominate one person to take all the tools?
Yes, well, not all of them. Share them equitably amongst yourselves, surely.
Interesting. On my recent ride, I was in search of a missing nut, which I procured from a very out-of-the-way road sign. And it came off as a 12-millimeter headed nut, if you like, or it needed a 12-millimeter spanner. And the one I found was the same thread, but required a 13-millimeter spanner. And my riding companion, who we had designated as responsible for all tools, had Googled tools needed for a CRF and had found that 13 didn't figure in the list of
Excellent.
So I brought a 13.
I didn't think you needed any tools with a Honda. I thought they were bulletproof. Isn't that what all of the forums say? If you're going to buy your first trail bike, is buy a CRF 250L.
It was another rattling loose situation.
So presumably somebody had an adjustable with them, though.
Not really, but I would just say if you're going to take spanners, take the full range of spanners. But that's probably quite obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
But I'm always nervous relinquishing that kind of responsibility for tools to somebody else. Because I kind of think you get to know your own bike and you get to know what all the little fiddly tools you need to take and the extensions for sockets, if sockets at all.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to take everything.
Never quite like admonishing that responsibility.
Plus the fact you might get split up or whatever.
Autonomy is key.
That was the opinion I thought he would have.
Well, you didn't get quite that far with your impersonation of him a few minutes before he joined. Or did you actually hear that, Noel?
Was there a sweepstake and has somebody just won? As everyone, a draw?
I think that's a solid opinion, but it doesn't count for boiling water, obviously.
Anything else we need to talk about on things you need to take with you? Have we captured everything?
I'm surprised that nobody brings tyre levers.
No, you're absolutely right. You do need tyre levers.
How many tyre levers?
I think 3.
3, yes. Correct. Changing tyres this very evening.
You're doing it yourself? I was just saying that you always pay somebody else to do it.
Normally do, and tonight I thought, no, I'll do what Greg says. I'll do it myself, and ended up wrestling with a rear tyre.
And did it work?
Falls, 2 submissions. Yeah, I did it, but God, it's horrible, isn't it?
I might get one of those Rabaconda things.
Really? What is a Rabaconda?
Yeah. It's the things that makes when you see them do it on the YouTube, it makes it look very easy to change a tyre.
Have a lever or something.
Yeah, it's a sort of a big rig thing that the wheel sits on, and then you have a very, very long lever.
Yeah.
It's got lots of leverage.
Yeah, I went in with a guy in the village and we bought one together and use that every time. Amazing.
Yeah.
And they do work, right? They are good.
They really do work, yeah.
Probably the most middle-class thing you'll hear all day.
What? Went in a Rabaconda with a guy in the village.
A guy in the village.
Yeah, we picked it up from Rachel's. Got that and some hummus and quinoa.
But isn't the most middle class thing you could possibly say is, I pay a man to do my tyres for me? Surely.
Yeah.
So talking about what other people take when they go trail riding, one of the things that I always take is a print off of my insurance and tax and MOT if it's appropriate.
Have you ever had to use that? Because they do all the license plate. They get all that. Even I can test it.
Yeah, but also on my first ride, I managed to snap my license plate off. So they had a chat, and also, yeah, they can look you up, but I always prefer to have a hard copy myself.
That's a good point, actually, Alex, because the license plate thing, I have had for 16 years one of those flexible, not strictly speaking legal show plates on my bike, but the thing is they bend rather than break, and I've actually got it's full size with full size lettering, so it looks completely legal although for some reason it isn't fully legal, and I've never had an issue with that.
Have you been asked to produce documents ever, anyone?
Nope.
I have, yeah.
I think it's a good idea. It's one of those things, you just print them off once, leave them in your bag, they're there forever. And certainly if you go into Europe, I think most countries in Europe, you are required to carry your documents with you at all times anyway.
I've come across quite a few police on the trails, and generally it's a stop, helmet off, have a chat, and as soon as you've done that, that's enough most of the time.
The only other thing, I've got a red bike light that I take with me just in case if I do whack the rear fender and take the rear light out or something, and you end up riding back when it's dusk or dark. Good
call. But one slight suggestion is, I think you probably haven't heard the episode when we talked about not using the word fender because they're mud guards.
My apologies.
Don't do it again. You won't be invited back. James sent in a question about essential maintenance skills. What do you need to do in the garage to keep your bike up and running and reliable? I don't know why he asked me. He probably hasn't seen the last film we made where my bike was frequently giving up the ghost. But what sort of maintenance do you do?
God, this is a hard one, isn't it? Because all the old rules don't really apply anymore because bikes are quite tricky now. But I would always, the only lesson I've learned over the years is if you think something might need fixing before you go, it definitely does need fixing before you go. And then I've been caught out so many times with thinking those tyres will get me round. They never did get me round. Those brake pads will get me round. They sort of didn't, and it did weigh on your mind a lot as you were on a trip. So I would say at least change the stuff that you know is on the way out, or if you think that might rattle loose, it will rattle loose. Do something about it.
Yeah, so it's things like, brake pads, obviously. It's probably a wise idea to check your clutch fluid level every 16 years or so. Air filters, oil and air filters, you should be able to change that. It's all pretty basic stuff, isn't it? And if you're a bit nervous about having a go, just have a go anyway, because it's not difficult.
Things like bearings are tricky, aren't they? Because everything's happened to you, hasn't it? You've had the clutch oil level thing happen to you. You've had the wheel bearing thing happen to you during a trip.
Yeah.
Wheel bearings are tricky, isn't it? I would sort of maybe put the bike on its stand, tip it over and give them a wobble. But other than that, it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it, as to whether your bearings will see you through or not. But
yes, agreed. And I did do that. You always give your wheels a bit of a wobble to see if the bearings are gone, but they weren't when we left, and they went on the trip.
Yeah, bearings are one of those things you need a special tool for, but everything else is just the bike's cleverly designed so that you can fix all of these things yourself at home. Air filter, easy, couple of screws, brake pads, get the caliper off, no sweat.
See, I don't think you do need special tools to do bearings. And also,
well, no, you probably don't need them, but it makes the job a billion times easier and more accurate.
Yeah, it depends on the bike. I know on one of my Hondas, there's a little tool that you need that takes out a piece on a thread. Then it needs a 3-pronged Honda tool number 31447 to get it out. But generally, they are just take the dust seal out and get them out.
That's Hondas, though, isn't it? They're awful to work on. Not like a KTM. You can just whip anything out and back on in seconds.
Ready to race.
Ready to relax.
But that's it's just a general keep on top of stuff, isn't it?
There is a routine maintenance schedule for every bike. It will say in the book how often you need to change the oil. Don't skimp on oil changes. Do them more frequently, if anything. I change the air filter pretty much every time I ride my KTM dirt bike. I've got 3, and you wash them all at once, so that you've got 2 ready to go once the next one's been used.
And do you find when you do that, they needed doing?
Yeah, because they're the foam type of filter, and you've got a very open air box on my KTM, so it does get grubby fairly quickly. And
I've just replaced mine, actually. I had the air filter, the paper air filter from stock. It seems to be doing fine. It had done 3,000 miles or something, but I got one of the Googletech ones on recommendation from everyone. So easy to fit. It is literally 2 screws. It comes out, goes back in, and apparently they're amazing.
What about bleeding brakes? Because when your brakes start to go soft and spongy, I know I do mine now, but I really haven't sussed out a really good way of doing it. I tend to do something slightly different every time. I'll back bleed, as in you push the oil in from a syringe from the caliper up to the handlebar, and then what I tend to do is you just flick it really light, flick the lever really lightly and repeatedly, and that helps to get the air bubbles out. And then also what I then tend to do is to pull the brake in and leave it on overnight, because that then gravity helps all of the air bubbles rise up and pop out at the top, and that tends to do the job.
That's all I do, is just get an old inner tube and make a big elastic band out of an old inner tube by cutting it up and stick that around around the lever and the grip and leave it overnight. But I've had brakes for years that I've never bled unless I've had to. But no, I don't do that routinely, and I haven't really suffered from that. I don't think. Maybe I need to try it.
I mean, that's the other thing you probably should do, is to have a regular cycle of maintenance. So every 2 years or whatever, depending on how often you ride, every 2 years change front and rear wheel bearings, and then 6 months later do your brake lines or whatever. I don't know. That's probably a sensible thing to do. Life's too busy for that kind of malarkey, though, isn't it?
This is the same guy in the village that I bought the Rabaconda with. He does his wheel bearings like every 3rd ride or something. But he rides enduros and rallies. So he thrashes that bike and then power washes it, because he just doesn't really care about the bearings.
Do you know what? I was thinking about the pack, because a lot of people say don't use a jet wash on your bike because it destroys the bearings. And I'm thinking, well, I'd rather spend 10 minutes cleaning my bike every time I ride it, and then a couple of hours changing the bearings once every couple of years, because it just seems far more time efficient to me.
And you can power wash it without going near your spindles.
Yeah.
Of course
you just hold it back for that bit. Yeah.
I'm going to have to just go upstairs and take something out of the Rayburn.
That's the second most middle class thing
I'm going to hear.
The hell is a Rayburn? I thought they were sunglasses.
It's an Arga, but they've got square plates instead of round ones.
Yeah. Well, I was going to describe it as it's the poor man's Arga.
But a poor man's Arga? Who are you people?
It's probably just as well you're going, because we're going to talk about riding technology next, and you've obviously not gone beyond. Is he gone? He probably has. He's not gone beyond maps yet. Probably a newfangled technology to Noel. Technology-wise, Will and Alex, you are both men of technology. What do you use on the trail?
Garmin.
Garmin what?
Garmin Montana 700i.
Sounds expensive.
Yeah, it was. But at this, so I got it on a friends and family discount because a friend of mine worked at Garmin, and that made it good. But they were ridiculously expensive at the time. They are still expensive because they've got the in-reach thing that I was talking about earlier, the fact that you can communicate via GPS and not via phone signal. So it's a safety item. It's a navigation thing.
Aren't they about £500 or more than that?
Yeah, they are.
Or more.
Yeah.
I could Google.
And if I didn't have a discount, I would still be rocking my Montana 600, my Montana 610. Don't get the one with the camera. It costs more. Who the hell takes pictures on their sat nav? It's dumb, but they're really good. They're just I have a secret technique to kind of downloading trails onto a 600 when you're out in the field, but it's a bit of a palaver.
So Garmin Montana 700.
Yeah.
It's rugged and it's versatile.
It's also a bit shit. It's not. I've got a lot of Garmin stuff because of my friend that works at Garmin. And I do a lot of cycling. And they kind of, nobody's good at it for whatever reason. Nobody has made a decent GPS, but it's the best connected thing that you can send GPX files to, and it sort of basically works. But for the longest time, you couldn't even navigate to a postcode. And it turns itself off if you ride at above 60 miles an hour on a single cylinder bike.
Is that the vibrations it's telling you no?
Yeah.
So just looking at the price, I'm looking at a 750i, which has got the inReach technology and the camera. That's £700. It's £100 less.
So stupid.
£600 without the camera, and it is £530 without the inReach technology.
Yeah, it's bonkers money.
The great thing about having a device like a GPS is you can actually get GPX files off people, and GPX is correct me if I'm wrong, it's a Garmin specific format.
No, it's topographics. It's interchangeable, so you can use. They don't own it. They have variations of it, I think, but it's just an XML file that anyone can make a GPX. Everyone does. It's not specific to Garmin. You could use it on anything that can read GPX files, which is basically any GPS or phone or whatever.
Which allows you to do things like download the TET, or to share routes with friends, get something from a neighbouring TRF group that you can actually put onto your phone, and pretty much opens up the rest of the world to you.
Yeah. The TET is a GPX.
Alex, what do you use, if anything?
So a friend of mine has an iPhone with View Ranger on it. So that's always done us well, pretty much. There's normally times where we'll pull over and have a bit of a gander at it just to see which way we need to go when compared to actual real world. But most of the time, the rides that I've been going on are with the TRF. The routes around our way are pretty well known, well trodden. So most of the time, it's a case of you pretty much know where you're going. And as a relatively new rider, you want to stay the right side of the trails, ride some relatively established trails whilst you get your skill level up. So I've never really needed or wanted to kind of go off the beaten track and go on some of those more less ridden routes. So for me, from a navigation point of view, me and my mate tend to just use View Ranger on an iPhone, and that works pretty well. I mean, the only thing I'd recommend is having a really good phone case. I think Ultimate add-ons do a really good range of cases, which are really good and really rugged, and even if your phone does fly off at however many miles an hour you're going on, it'll probably be relatively safe. The only other piece of technology I think is really, really helpful, especially on the trails, is What3 Words. So a lot of people navigate using postcodes and things like that, whilst if you're on the trails, there's a good chance that you don't know where you are in regards to a postcode. If you want to try and tell someone where you are, longitude and latitude is probably not going to be something that you can remember, or if you're calling someone and you're looking at it on your phone, it's going to be difficult. So having What3 Words, or a lot of the local emergency services now support that format. So if you give them a What3 Words reference, they'll be able to find you. And I think that's a really, really helpful thing to have if you need to get yourself out of danger. If you're in trouble, you tell them where you are using What3 Words. I think that's great.
What3 Words, it's basically an app you can download onto your phone. I'm not even sure there's a cost, is there?
No, it's a free app. So what 3 Words have done is they've mapped the world into 3 by 3 meter squares. So you can give them a unique 3-word reference to where you are. You'll relatively easily be able to locate yourself. You can drop a pin. It'll give you the 3x3 square that you're in, and a lot of emergency services or other people with that will be able to find you.
Yeah, so I'm like you. I've used I've got an Android phone which I've used for years and years with various different apps on it. But I've actually I bought a Garmin Zumo XT, which is about half the price of the 700, and seems to do everything that the 700 does. But it's probably not as roughy-tufty, and I don't know. Doesn't seem to be missing anything. Will?
Now, if you can upload OS maps and stuff onto it, then you're winning.
I've got the maps from Talkie Toaster.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it comes with like a base set of maps anyway, and they don't seem to add a great deal of detail to the maps that it comes with anyway.
Yeah, I think if I were doing it again, I would probably look at that a lot harder.
You mentioned earlier your spot locator, the InReach type thing.
No, it's built in. Montana has it.
Right.
But it's the same technology. So if you were to buy a Spot, Garmin, is it Spot? Yeah, the little orange thing. No, Spot is something else, isn't it? Garmin InReach is one thing, and Spot is another.
And this is something that's built into a Garmin?
Yes.
A Montana?
Yes.
I've got a Montana. I don't know anything about this.
Yours is from 1942, though, Noel. That doesn't work on that.
Yeah, I think they're still... they communicate by semaphore.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the newer ones you can...
It's the newer ones.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
You've got to always have the newer one. Why don't you have the newer one?
Because the older one works.
Noel,
yes.
I don't know why I'm asking.
Yeah,
have you got anything to add about technology to use on the trails?
Keep it simple. I just have a Garmin 6 something, has the maps on it that came with it. I'm not interested in contours and knowing where the trees are, as long as it's got all the roads on it. So I don't know. I just do a very simple kind of use a Garmin Montana, but I don't sort of look for different kind of maps to load onto it. Just download the simplest GPX onto it I can and do it like that. I don't use phones as well. Find that problematic, but yeah, just a simple. I used to use the old 60CX, the lovely little, look like a mobile phone. That was a great little simple device. But yeah, keep it simple.
I think the only danger is if you've kept it simple and you've got OS maps from 1970 whatever on it, which is basically what they are. As soon as you have to reroute, you're screwed. You can't. It's just, all those byways are out of date. Then you have to go to the phone, which is a palaver.
Yeah.
Code of conduct, do's and don'ts. Now, I've cut and pasted a list of all the stuff from the TET, which is a particularly fine list, and it has 14 different items on it. But let's just talk generally about the way you should ride on the trails. What attitude do you have towards other users and things like that, bearing in mind you're on something that's still classed legally as a road and will also be used by mountain bikers, cyclists, walkers, children, horses, that type of thing. I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, really? But
I was recently on a trail ride. Been on 2 trail rides in the last 2 weeks, and in both cases I've been going down long downhill stretches, and when I've seen people coming towards me, I've obviously slowed down, but I've also turned the engine off and just coasted. And I've found that it's made absolutely no difference to to how people react to me coming the other way. So slowing down. Greg said something interesting, didn't he, recently, and when he said that he started to treat people like horses, and that's probably a good way of dealing with walkers on tracks, isn't it?
Stop and feed them polos.
Yeah. Of going the extra mile and really slowing down almost and turning off maybe even sometimes. But that seems to work. It didn't work with me the other day. But yeah, other users, slowing down. That's the big one, isn't it?
One thing that occurs to me as well is that I have seen posts from people on various forums that, I've got a motocross bike, where can I ride? And the answer is you can ride it on a motocross track. You can't actually take it on a trail because legally trails are roads, unpaved roads. So you do need tax, insurance and everything else that you need to have passed your test and all that kind of other stuff.
Most people are pleased to see you generally out on a trail. I have found anyway. If you stop, helmet off and have a little chat. It's the helmet off thing, but if you've got a flip up, great. I wouldn't trust one, but you know, a face that they can see and chat to is great. But some people are just arseholes. I mean, I see it. I do a lot of bicycling around trails and stuff, and it's the same people that are just cross that you're sharing their space with them,
even though they're walking on a road.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing I struggle with as well, when people, you know, have a go at you, and you tend not to be aggressive towards people. They tend to be aggressive towards you, which I think is a bit weird. I don't know why, that because you're stood next to a motorcycle that they feel it's acceptable to like shout at you and say things like, I'm going to call the police on you and things like this. And you kind of think, well, if you were walking along an A road, then it would be me on a motorcycle calling the police on you for walking along an A road or something like that, which I know is still, you know, okay to do, but very dangerous. But I found recently with my WR was very standard. It had a massive exhaust on it, very standard exhaust. So it actually wasn't particularly noisy and relatively unoffensive. But the Beta is a bit more noisy. And every time I see a horse, even in the distance, I'll kill the engine and just walk the bike. It just makes life a lot easier. But the reception I've had from horse riders is they're really quite surprised at that. And they'll actually stop and want to have a chat and things. And that's really nice. And I hope that if they get back from their ride and say, oh, some motorcyclists, you know, stopped and were very respectful, then that kind of does, it hopefully heals any damage that they've had from a negative experience. But I tend to find, you know, just be aware of the noise that you're making more than anything else.
Well, I think the thing is with horses is it's a good idea to ask them, because I've found the reactions kind of vary. It's often a good idea to ask them, what would you like us to do? Because some horses are fine and you can kind of ride past them. Others are adamant that you switch the engines off and go back the other way and hide so they can get their horse for, you know, down the rest of the lane kind of thing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you've got the right attitude, it shouldn't be a problem doing any of those things. We want people to accept us, and so there's no reason why we shouldn't be accommodating for other people.
Horse riders will normally signal what they want you to do, whether to keep going or to stop. I would say also as well, it's always best to, I think, expect a positive reaction every time and go into it that way, isn't it?
Yeah. I always bring polos with the horses, because sometimes the skittish ones that aren't quite sure are curious, and if you give them a polo, it just sort of reinforces that, oh, if I see a motorcycle, I might get a polo.
I think the other thing to remember there as well is horses are obviously flight animals. And so even if you stop your bike and walk past them, don't just jump on your bike, fire it off and go hooning off into the distance, because there's a good chance that that's going to do as much damage as, you know, riding past them.
I think the thing I always think about is that around the next bend there could be a small child, and I think you ride accordingly. So it could be a child or a dog or
a bike coming the other way. I've ridden with loads of people where you kind of think, I think they think this is a one-way trail, you know, and that you almost need to, on some tracks, you really do need to almost keep left or right, depending where you are. And
I've had friends break legs in those exact situations. Yeah,
I think there was two bikes collided in near us, didn't they? Climbing Grisdale, where that was a really nasty accident where two riders hadn't expected to meet something coming the other way. But yeah, always expect something around the corner, definitely.
So other things, I'm just looking at the list now. Keep to the defined way across farmland. Certainly in the lakes, some of the tracks are quite tricky and people will take a detour across the grass and whatever.
Yeah.
And farms take a very dim view of that, because you're effectively removing the food for their animals.
Yeah. Or just don't cut corners. That's the other thing. There's a few S-bends near me that people sometimes cut, and that doesn't help.
Obvious things like leave gates as you find them, so as to safeguard stock. Travel at a safe speed, taking regard of conditions and visibility. The TET is not and should never be regarded as a racetrack. Ride quietly and use the throttle with discretion, as noise does offend. And I guess that's more importantly when you are passing residential places.
Campsites as well. I was really conscious on a Wales trip that my bike was really loud, and I actually paid to quieten it slightly.
Well, what I was going to say, was it really loud? If you changed the exhaust on it?
Well,
you have, haven't you? You have. And I put it to you that you have changed your exhaust.
I did change the exhaust because I had to, because I couldn't put luggage on my bike without it going on fire. So I had to change the exhaust.
So what did you do? Did you buy a baffle to put in it?
It came with a baffle, but due to request of weird people like me, he actually made a second thing, which made this is Wings exhaust, which make exhaust for all sorts of people, all sorts of bikes. And he's really good, the guy. There's a special thing you can put on the other end that makes it even more quieter, like a little cone valve thing.
It's worked.
Yeah, it has worked. Yeah.
So do not travel in large groups. 6 or less is the ideal. I think that's not unreasonable. If you are in bigger groups, then just break them down with leave half an hour between you.
Half an hour?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just making shit up.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Let's go with 5.
10. Let's go. I'll raise you to 20. Remember that trails can be fragile and susceptible to erosion, especially when wet. Please consider a detour. Yeah, that's certainly the case if you're riding over.
Where do we stand on riding down the middle of the track?
In what context?
Well, if you've got I'm often on a track that's quite grassy, being a green lane, and there's 2 tracks, usually quite gravelly. And you can always see down the middle, there's like a muddy section where usually a motorcyclist has decided to create a third way down the middle of the track on the only grassy bit that's trying to survive. So I always try, unless the ruts are too deep, to stay in the track and not in the middle of the track. Am I going too far?
I have no opinion on that.
Really? So
Yeah.
you don't give that any thought?
No, but I will now. It's going to trouble me.
Yeah, it should do.
So I tend to go the easiest way.
Right.
I second that, Clive.
The way that's not going to make me fall off.
As a person who doesn't have a huge amount of experience, but has experienced that ruts are really hard, if there is a way of avoiding a rut, I'll probably take that option. Absolutely.
I think what's also going through my head is sometimes you'll often find as well, that's probably the only bit left for the lovely rambler to walk along, is the lovely bit in the middle. And if you're going to create a third rut, that's not great.
The TRF say that you should stick to the Land Rover trails, don't they? The wheels.
Do they? I love the TRF. I'm going to join, definitely now.
You should definitely join.
No, you've never thought of that, Clive, have you not? You selfish bastard.
I am intrinsically selfish, you know that. But at the same time, very generous in some ways.
I bet Will's thought of it.
That's all I ever think about.
He's thought of everything. Okay, number 11 in the list is acknowledge the presence of other trail users with a friendly wave and a smile. It doesn't cost anything.
And an open face helmet.
No, fuck that. I especially do that to people that have a miserable face on, which is most walkers, really, because they hate you.
Yeah,
So
but that's
give them
antagonistic, isn't it? That's...
Yes, it is. Sorry. Still going to do it, though.
But the open face helmet thing, I think, if you are stopping that, putting a face behind, and Noel will tell me off for having a mirrored lensed goggles. But as soon as you put a face on it, like, right, you're actually a human after all. You're not some douchebag on a noisy, ready-to-race machine.
You acknowledge that, Will, and yet you still go out
100%.
dressed as a Star Wars character.
Yeah, because I can see, breathe, hear all the rest of it better. So it's good kit for me to progress and do my day. But if I stop, I'll take it all off and, reveal my hideous face.
But the ride by Will, nobody gets to see the real Will when you ride by. They just see scary robot.
They're like an Autobot.
Little do they know, underneath that mirrored visor is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But they'll never know that.
But yeah, I get it. The human thing is, and if I need to, I'll stop and I do take it off at every opportunity. If I'm stopped at all, I will take the helmet off to talk to people. I don't do it through my helmet. Always take my helmet off to talk to someone, because it's amazing. I think it's the thing, when the police did that. It's not a biker, it's whatever it is. It's not a bike, it's a biker. And they did like a little backstory that person on the motorcycle is quite vulnerable and all the rest of it. It's the same thing. Helmet and goggles, people think you are basically a robot. Take it off.
Yeah.
I do take it off a lot.
Number 14, which is contribute to the viability of rural communities by spending your money with local businesses.
Yeah, I went in a cafe the other day and they gave me 10% off because I was on a motorcycle.
No way. Which one?
Yeah, in Coniston. Is stopping at cafes a big part of your trail riding experience, or is that just me?
That's me too.
I wish there was cafes on some of the trails that we ride. Unfortunately, the only place we ever stop is at a petrol station. So especially if it's cold and rainy, the one thing you can look forward to is a coffee from a machine that's warm and a Mars bar.
No, is this the Thetford loop?
Yeah, so we normally stop at Brandon because it tends to be in the middle.
Oh, Brandon's good. Yeah, some good stuff in there. It's a nice Greek place.
We tend not to stop for like lunch. It's just a case of put some fuel in, have a Mars bar, and crack on.
Oh, you could get a baklava instead.
He's young. He doesn't stop for lunch. that will
carries
change.
on until it's dark.
Yeah. There should be a list. Yeah, for every one of those rides on View Ranger or wherever, there should be a list of top-notch places to stop.
So, Alex, you would never take a little detour to find that artisan little coffee shop.
I don't think so. I think that my trail riding experience is normally I've got a couple of hours before I have to go back into dad mode. I see the movies that you guys make and the amazing countryside you ride through, but I tend to find that the route that I ride is less road, definitely. There's very little road on it. So the opportunity to come across those kinds of places is relatively limited. The goal of the ride is normally to get as many miles under our belt as possible on the trails and enjoy that.
Nah, you're missing the point.
I know. I need to go riding more often with more people. So.
It doesn't matter. If you're in your kit, you're still having fun. So it's fine. You can stop. You're at a cafe. You're still in your kit. You're still having fun.
That brings us to the end of our 3-part beginners podcast. Have we missed anything? Have we got anything wrong? Please get in touch with us. You can actually message us via our Facebook page, and we love it when you do. So give us a shout if we've got anything completely wrong or missed anything, or you'd like us to cover anything else. A massive thank you to Alex and Will. Alex is a listener who agreed to step up and help out with this, so really, really grateful to him and our old friend Will as well. So we have a few ideas for podcasts that are coming up. We're going to do one on multi-day trip planning, and Paul and Greg are going to join us for that one. We have a very special guest joining us in the new year. His most popular film has got over 1 million views, and he's quite a character, so we're really looking forward to him. It's going to be a nice surprise. I'm not going to tell you who he is. And also we're thinking, in celebration of the new ferry from Holland to Denmark, we're going to do a Scandinavian special. So I've got a couple of listeners lined up to cover Denmark and Norway. I'm really keen to hear from any listeners that would like to contribute from Sweden and Finland to tell us an awful lot more about trips to Scandinavia, which with the new ferry should become a much stronger possibility. Also, if you've got any more ideas, you've done any great trips and you'd like to be on the pod, give us a shout. We'd be more than happy to have you. Tra! Thanks for listening. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you really appreciate what we do, you could consider supporting us on Patreon or buy us a coffee. Links are available on our website, which is tampodcast.com, tampodcast.com, where we also have a limited selection of branded stuff. But either way, please keep listening and spreading the word. See you next time.